AWS IAM policy and how to understand one? Let's find out in this video. To begin with, what is AWS IAM? IAM is simply a web service that helps you securely control access to AWS resources. With an IAM policy, you can define who has access to what resources. Next, let's take a look at what a typical AWS IAM policy looks like. In AWS, these IAM policies are stored as JSON documents. To remember the 5 key elements in an AWS IAM policy, I use an acronym called RECAP, where R stands for the resource, the E stands for effect, C stands for condition, A stands for action, and P stands for principle. As you can see, it's not necessarily in this order, but it just helps you remember that these are the 5 key elements of an IAM policy. So now, let's look at these elements one by one. First, we have this thing called principle. Principle is the entity that is the allowed or denied access. It can be an IAM user, IAM role, and so on. Most of the times you will see that principle is missing from the IAM policy. Principle is actually optional. The reason being because you attach the IAM policy to an IAM user or a role, so principle is automatically inferred. Such policies are called identity-based policies. Whereas in contrast, you also have something called resource-based policies. And in those cases, principle is mandatory. You have to specify a principle, otherwise the IAM policy will not make much sense because it is attached to a resource, so it needs to know what principle it needs to work on. Some examples of resource-based policies can be like the policies that are attached to an Amazon S3 bucket or EBS, etc. I will provide a link in the video description if you want to take a look at what all resources allow you to attach policies like as resource-based policies. The next element in the IAM policy is called effect. The effect element is always required, and it tells you that what should the policy do after evaluation. As the values are pretty clear, it tells you whether the action should be allowed or denied. The next element to look at is action. Action refers to the operation in your request that is allowed or denied. You can have actions like easy to start instance, S3 get object. Basically, you are telling that whether you want the S3 get object allow operation to succeed or not, or easy to start instance to be like denied or to be allowed, things like that. If for a given resource you want to allow or deny everything, you can use a wildcard like IAM star, S3 star, and so on. Basically, that can help you reduce the amount of IAM policies that you have to write and you have to maintain, but it comes with a con that you don't have the fine granular access. You can use a combination of them. We will come to those in future videos. The next element in the IAM policy is called resource. The value of the resource basically refers to the target resource on which the policy will be applied. You specify a policy using an ARN. ARN stands for Amazon Resource Name. Mostly all the services have a unique set of resources which you can identify using their ARN. There are a very few services which do not let you specify resources used like separately. In such cases, you just simply use star in your IAM policy. And now, the last element in the IAM policy called condition. This element lets you specify the condition under which the policy is effective. Although this is an optional element, but it's still very, very powerful. You can specify conditions saying that I am writing this IAM policy and this is going to be effective only under this condition. For example, based on certain regions, based on certain usernames, based on certain tags, and so on. When you write the value for condition, you can use a lots of operators like, string equals, boolean, etc. And on top of that, you can apply multiple conditions together within a single condition block. So overall, this will let you provide a very specific IAM policy that is true only under these set of conditions. So these were the basic key elements of an IAM policy. I would recommend you to open your AWS IAM Management Console and start playing around with the IAM policies. What you can do is write some policies of your own, attach it to certain users, and then log in as those users and check their effects. This will help you become more conversant and more comfortable with reading and writing your own IAM policies. I hope you like this video. I will be adding more such videos related to my own cloud security learning in future. So if you want to stay tuned, do not forget to subscribe. Until next time, happy coding!